Hello and welcome to this video on preparing for recruitment. My name is the Anonymous Advisor and I'm here to guide you through the process of recruiting staff safely and successfully. This video will provide tips, tricks and effective ways that you can ensure that you've adequately taken the time that you need to reflect on the role that you're employing for. The audience of this video is for those who are new to recruiting staff, therefore may not have considered all the aspects that they need to consider before even placing an advert out. It's also designed for those who need further advice and guidance on what to consider before recruiting. It's important to note that recruitment and selection is an expensive process which also takes up a lot of time, so make sure you've given it adequate thought and preparation. This video is also supported by other guides that I've provided from both employee and employer perspectives. These range from effective job searching, writing a successful CV, or how to write a job advert which will attract the right candidates. Normally, the process of recruitment will arise as soon as a role becomes vacant. This is due to either someone in the position resigning or you being able to create some new roles which you need to employ staff for. When these two instances occur, there's normally three key considerations that you need to have. The first is the organisational situation, so considering the wider context around the role. The second step is to consider the needs of both the department that the role will sit in, but also the role itself. Finally, you must ensure that you give yourself opportunity to consider the time and cost consideration of recruitment. According to a CIPD survey, the time taken to recruit from vacancy to start date can vary from 5.9 weeks to 16.3 weeks. By remembering what your needs are in the department and planning to have a member of staff down for anything up to 4 months will make this time less stressful and far more smooth for you. Also, by giving yourself this time, you need to consider everything that's important about the role, and this will undoubtedly ensure that the role that you eventually recruit for is the best fit for the organisation and the department needs. In relation to the organisational situation, it's important that you consider both the planned and current context that the company is facing. In relation to the current context, are there any staff going through a reorganisation process elsewhere in the organisation? In these instances, there may be a need to offer the vacant role that you have as a suitable alternative prior to any dismissal through redundancy, which may mean that you can't advertise this role externally at this stage. You may also want to look at the pool of staff that exists within the organisation and if there's anyone that you could look to develop into your vacant role or would be well suited to work there. In that case, you may want to look at whether you're offering the role as a permanent one or as a secondment opportunity to allow someone internally to give it a go. I would suggest that if you review there are similar roles in place within the organisation, look at how they are and how effective they are. By discussing this with the line managers of those similar roles, they may be able to give you valuable insight into what is or isn't working about that role. This can provide you with ideas on what to do differently with this role. In terms of the planned context, it is worth looking at whether there's any planned change in the next few months. It doesn't mean that you'll need to wait to recruit. However, you may want to look at the pool of impacted staff and if there's anything you can offer prior to it as a suitable alternative. You may also want to discuss with managers of similar roles whether or not they're also planning on making changes to those roles due to a particular reason. In this instance, you may want to review if you need to do the same before you recruit. By reviewing the role or the needs of the department, you may want to start by looking at who is leaving the role that you need to recruit for. Are you going to replace like for like, or is there anything different that you need from the role that the current incumbent didn't do? It's worth going through your job description at this stage and ensure that the responsibilities and the skills of the role match what you need. I would also advise that you watch one of my videos on writing an effective job description and person specification that can assist you with this. With the role that is becoming vacant, you may also want to look at whether the hours of the role are adequate. Doing something such as an exit interview will assist with this, as the person who is leaving will be able to give you valuable insight into what worked or didn't work about the role. For instance, they may say that they struggle to complete their workload on a weekly basis. If this has happened, take a look at the hours and the duties of the post. Also, look at any other feedback that they've offered and whether it impacts whether you need to change anything about the role itself. You may also want to take time to consider existing staff within your department. For instance, if you have a part-time staff member who wants to work full-time, would they want to consider changing roles to this vacant one? You may have someone working on a flexible working contract, which means that you have a particular staffing need on a particular day. Does this role cover that? Look at the distribution of labour within your service, as you may want to do some internal shuffling before committing to any recruitment. It's far better to make the changes that you can to the vacant role now than to a role that has someone working in it. Finally, you may want to look at the different labour options that you have, particularly around skills and experience that you currently have and how that matches what your needs are. Although it would be great to be able to offer development opportunities for other staff, realistically you may also need to consider that you have to recruit for a particular skill or experience to meet that need. The final consideration to make pre-recruitment is the time and financial factors. The cost of recruitment can be very expensive, anything up to £4,000 per campaign, so ensure you've thought about the different options before you commit to anything. Don't forget there's different aspects within recruitment that can cost different amounts. The role itself may become more expensive if you've made some major changes to the role, as it may mean that you need to offer a higher salary, especially if you have a job evaluation process in place. Recruitment also takes up a lot of time, the most being your time in writing adverts and job descriptions, shortlisting and selecting. You can reduce this time by using a recruitment agency to appoint on your behalf, however remember that this will also be at an additional cost. If you have staff working through an employment agency that you would like to take on permanently, although this reduces costs of recruitment, you may still have to pay the agency a fee for taking on that staff member. I would recommend that you take time looking at the recruitment method that you're using to ensure that you've given some consideration to what the cost may be. Different methods will cost more and will depend on how many stages you have or how many different staff you need to have help you. There's undoubtedly a link between the effort that you put in place to be more flexible in recruiting and the quality of the person that you employ, so this may also be a non-negotiable cost. The final cost consideration you need to think about is what the applicant's salary expectation is. Even though you may have a range or amount in mind, you may have to negotiate slightly on this for the right person. In terms of time factors, although I've already explained that recruitment can take time, it's useful for you to know what time factors you need to consider and if there's anything that you can do to speed it up if needed. So firstly, there's management time in writing the advert or JD for the post, as well as getting the advert up online. Normally, in order to have a good pool of candidates, you'll need to advertise for a minimum of 2 weeks, so you'll need to give yourself time for that. Then you'll need to shortlist for the post, which will take a week or so if you're shortlisting with someone else. You'll then need to allocate some time when inviting candidates to selection, as they'll need some notice so that they can prepare. After making the selection, you may want some time to deliberate so you can pick who you want to have, which will then be followed up by making the job offer. Normally, candidates will then need to give anything from a week's to a month's notice with their existing employer before they can transfer over to you. Also remember, depending on the role, this notice period may be much longer. It's for this reason that you can look at what you can and can't speed up. I'd advise against advertising for less amount of time or not giving candidates notice for selection. However, if you have clearly outlined the assessment date on the advert, you could potentially reduce this. It's just about weighing up what's important for you. And that's it for this video on preparing for recruitment. I hope you find the advice and guidance useful when considering what factors are important to think about before beginning any recruitment process. Please remember to subscribe and like this video, and you can also follow me on Twitter, which is @theAnonAdvisor. Also take a look at my blog, and I shall see you on my next video. Thank you.